As a project manager, in a lot of cases, it would be very much like a ticket taker. You're executing someone else's plan. And 80% of that execution mindset still exists within product, except product has that extra element of being responsible for setting the strategy, making the decision, that kind of thing on the direction to take your team as opposed to purely execution.
Hello, my name is George Roots. I am the host of Career Curious. I am joined today with Ryan Conrad. You go by product manager or project manager? What do you go by?
Nowadays, I want to be a product manager, but the bulk of my experience is in project management. There's a very subtle difference.
Gotcha. So I guess to get started, like, where are you located and how long have you been in that space?
So I am located in Orlando, Florida. I'm born and raised here. I got out of Orlando for a little bit of time, spent some time even in New York, working in Manhattan. And then my wife got offered her dream job in dermatology to work in the Sunshine State. And so it was a really great opportunity to move back home, start a family. If I could, I would have stayed working in New York. That was great from a career perspective. But with this work from home culture that seems to be developing, you can work from anywhere these days.
Absolutely. So would you say, I guess, how long have you been in the project management, product management space? And is there a big difference between those types of jobs?
I think there is not as big a difference between those two titles as a lot of people might think there are. And maybe that's just my experience, so your mileage may vary. But I have been doing this for over 10 years, and I didn't start out as a project manager. When I graduated college, I always saw like product being like kind of that last rung on the ladder of like, I was a management information systems major. And so there was that blend of business and tech, but I can't code to save my life. And so I always thought like product was the end state where you've finally like managing the product that you help build as a project manager and a business analyst and QA and all of that. Not to say that one of those is necessarily better than the other, but everybody plays a role is the way I think about it. And so like for me, in my last couple of years now, I've made it to that product level where you're making decisions on the future of the business for your particular domain space, right? So as a project manager, in a lot of cases, it would be very much like a ticket taker. You're executing someone else's plan. And 80% of that execution mindset still exists within product, except product has that extra element of being responsible for setting the strategy, making the decision, that kind of thing on the direction to take your team as opposed to purely execution.
So I guess if I started from zero, Ryan from year one. And so you've been in, like you said, an analyst, whether or not that's IT analyst or a business analyst, would you recommend someone starting super early in their career going into the business analyst role? Is that like a requisite, or is a person able to hop in and say, I want to be a product person immediately?
In my honest opinion, when I graduated college, I saw the same people in the same cohort get the title product manager straight out of college. And I thought that was awful. I thought that was the silliest thing in the world, because how could these people understand the depth of the environment that we were playing in? And sure, like you can be a product analyst and you can work with a mentor and pick up on those talents. But what I really enjoyed about being a business analyst, and in my opinion, kind of starting at the ground level, right, was that I learned how to gather requirements, how to document things in an understandable way for various people in different levels in the organization, across departmentally, and really getting that ground level experience that I just used to develop my skills and throughout my career. So to answer your question succinctly, hell yes, start out as a business analyst.
Yeah, so I like that perspective because I was a business analyst as well, but also I think that there's something to being like a designer or engineer if you're going to make that jump. Not that you have to, but like when you have to see the pains of building the product, I think it gives you a perspective of of leading teams that are going to build products. I mean that from an example, like if you had to build widget A do you know how 20 other companies build widget A? As a designer, you might research that to your explanation of being a business analyst that does research and having to figure out which solutions do we choose and what is the norm of things. So I definitely agree that maybe hopping right in. Obviously, there's going to be unique situations where maybe it is useful, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I was very envious of those guys who got that product title right out of college that took me like 10 plus years to achieve. but
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean that they're better. It's just different.
And so I guess what is something you've done recently as a product person that you're proud of?
I would say the best thing was when I interviewed with our previous company, Company Cam, and my interview project was to figure out something new that Company Cam needed. And I was like, well, let's take all these contractors and their projects are already available through their showcase widget that they could use on their websites and publish directly, kind of like a SEO tool. And I was like, let's put it in our own domain space. And that ended up becoming an actual product that I got to launch with Company Cam from a 0 to 1 perspective. And that was what became Trusty. And I was able to do that within my first 6 months. And I was super proud because I blew everybody's expectations, primarily in cost and timing, just out of the water. And so, like, for me, that was like the aha transition between project manager and product. Was like, I said, I want to go build this. And they said, here's the runway to go do it. And that was like the most gratifying thing in my career, because when I was at Hanover Re previous to this, it was great because it was a huge company making tons of money. And I was on a huge project that had super high visibility. So you have like all these check boxes for any person's career, right? But I didn't get to decide what I wanted to do. I just like had to get stuff done and manage people far higher than me in the organization to a deadline. And I just felt like that was so lacking.
I just want to one illuminating question. You mentioned the word trusty earlier, and I don't know if our audience knows what trusty is, and so maybe say just a little bit about that so you can see, so listeners can see the impact of why that meant so much to you.
So Trusty was Company Cam's first play into a B2C product. And purely Company Cam for the last 7 years or so was a exclusively to subscribers who were other businesses, so a B2B product, right? And so our opportunity here that was available was to take all of these contractor showcase widgets that they were publishing to their own websites and then put them in our own domain space as like web property. I called it a digital billboard. And we were basically an equivalent to Angie's List without all that fluff, without all those marketing shenanigans that Angie's puts in front of homeowners, and just gave them a direct line to find trustworthy Company Cam subscribers, which not only generated free links, connections to our leads is the word I'm looking for, to our contractors. So they benefit by being a Company Cam contractor because they'll get free leads by being a contractor. But then the homeowner also wins because they find somebody who's done a project that they need done, and they can see the quality that that contractor brings to all their projects. So it's a win-win from both sides.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I guess a follow-up question is, hopefully at least to Jason, would you believe that, is it fair to say that a product manager aspires or has the characteristics of an entrepreneur? Meaning that I feel like the way you frame that is that you feel like you reached the top of the mountain or one of the of owning it from start to finish, and that feels like an entrepreneur idea.
I absolutely subscribe to the idea that a product manager is like the CEO of their product, right? That's the term we hear thrown around all the time. And I forget why, but I got really turned off by that idea recently. And I think it's because people use the term product owner a lot in conjunction with the product manager. And product owner seems to be dying. And I think that's the same way that a project manager title also seems to be dying in the space. And I think that's largely being pioneered by Zillow's CEO, who's like, I'm not going to hire project managers anymore. I need program managers. And so what we're seeing is like this transition from project manager to program manager, and then a product owner to a product manager. And these two roles still get conflated, and I'm applying to jobs all the time, and I'm just like, I'll apply to both. I don't care. Let's see how the company, like how it actually plays out. Are you product led? Or are you business led? Like sales led? How does this play out? And I'll leave that up to the interview process to really flesh that out.
Yeah, I can see us having a follow-up interview because I would love to dive deeper into one of those different things because I think somebody in the audience may have questions about those different segments. However, in the constraints of the time we're in, I guess what would be something that you would look forward to, like in a future career? Like, I guess, what's the evolution of a product manager?
The way I understand it, and yet I have not fully lived all of this, right, is that there's all these different, like people like to say I'm a level 1, 2, 3, etc., right, or S4, or whatever they like to call themselves. And coming from a banking history, like you being a VP at JP Morgan is largely meaningless. It just means you've been there 5 years in a lot of cases. And for me, my learned experience is that there's very little difference between the dollars on your paycheck between a regular product manager and a senior product manager. Yet everything I seem to apply to these days wants a senior role, but they only care about like 3 to 5 years. So again, it's more about like the longevity in the role and less about what you've actually done and are able to communicate, but that you are a known commodity in the space.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think I have like maybe 2 questions left. One question, or the next question. If someone were in 2 years into their career, like into the career of being a product manager, how important would it be for them to have alignment with the product? And I ask that from the perspective of, in my last role, like I struggled at times because I didn't have alignment with company cam, with the end user, meaning that it's a roofer, right? And so that's not ever been a passion of mine. And while I was able to be productive in that role, I feel like I was less productive had I been passionate about the product. Is it important? Is it important or as important, maybe even more important for a product manager to be kind of in love with the product?
As a product manager, I have to say overwhelmingly yes. But I also say that like I like to swing a hammer for my honey-do projects around the house. I've never roofed a house. So there's an extent to all these things. I mean, one of the best, there's a podcast I listened to recently with the guy who created the Jobs to Be Done framework. And he was building products for healthcare, like surgeons. He's not a surgeon. I don't think he's ever operated on anyone, but he's able to put himself in that mindset using tried and true frameworks. And so where you might lack that direct connection, I think there are other ways that you can fake it till you make it, right? And so if part of that experience or that career commodity concept that I mentioned earlier is that you have to understand the frameworks that are available to you and how you can apply them to your role. And so from the engineering perspective, maybe you don't need to be so passionate about swinging a hammer on a roof in 100-degree weather, but the product manager needs to sympathize and empathize with that roofer and understanding like, hey, maybe that guy's got gloves on. Maybe he can't like whip out his phone out of his overalls or whatever he's got on right now through his like OSHA required jumpsuit to fiddle with his phone to snap a bunch of photos. So like maybe we shouldn't make the buttons like 20 pixels wide. We need to make it 50 pixels wide. And these are things that I don't necessarily expect the engineering team to keep in mind, but like that's why we're a product team, right? You don't have to know everything. You can rely on others. I think Henry Ford classically said like being smart isn't always having the answer, but it's your ability to find someone who knows the answer, like your ability to get the answer.
Absolutely. I agree with that totally. All right. I guess, last real question and then one softball question after that. What does a week look like for a product manager? Like, what does a Monday feel like?
The joke I always used to say as a project manager, and this held true through product as well, was that I wasn't working if I was at my desk. I needed to be in a meeting somewhere, collaborating with others. My wife always gave me crap because she's like, why are you on the phone all the time? How do you ever find time to get work done. It's like, well, my job is my ability to collaborate. That intangibles. I don't have a hard skill set. I have a soft skill set about getting things done. It seems to be the thing. My hard skill is like being an Excel wizard and knowing a couple formulas. So I would say that a good portion of my day, including a Monday, is spent in meetings and collaborating with my product trio, my engineer, designer, and myself. And then there's I find that like user research is not something that comes easily. It's something you have to work at, like the gym. And if you don't exercise that muscle, it goes into atrophy, and you have to work it out to get it back. And so for me, like that's something that you have to build into your schedule. So you want to sprinkle in some user research at all times, whether that's at an actual interview with a customer, researching frameworks like I mentioned earlier that you can apply, whatever it may be. And then back to that business analyst approach of documenting. Like I fully subscribe to, if it's not documented, it doesn't exist. And so my product strategies, my future thinking has to be documented so that someone else can read it, understand it, and go through that cyclical process of iterating to say, this one-liner became a big thought, which became a researched, well-written thing that we can execute on. So writing, researching, and meetings.
That's fantastic. All right, softball question. If you could clear the slate, so nothing is true before now, nothing's true after now, is there any careers that you're curious about?
Well, yes, and it's kind of funny given the time that we're in, because everybody, like the pandemic is for so many traders, retail traders like Robinhood, to like explode, right? And so stock trading and coming from that banking background I mentioned, like it's not a foreign concept to me to be trading stocks on the side from time to time. And so like I don't want to manage other people's money, but that's a really interesting exercise in strategy, risk management, like really forming something and sticking to it, like creating a trading plan and sticking to it. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, so I always ask that question because I'm like, what if I could bring someone on the show that can illuminate more for the rest of us who are career curious? All right, well, I guess, Ryan, that's all the questions I have. Do you have any questions for me?
I've got one. I always have this one in my back pocket just in case, which is, what do other people not understand about the job you do?
Which job is that? Podcaster or EM?
Engineering manager.
Yeah, that's fair.
I forget you wear multiple hats.
Yeah, fair. I think that there's so many different types of EMs, and there's so many types of engineers that there's just a muddied expectation. What I mean is, I have another podcast that's going to release, the Audacity to Be Different podcast, in which I talk about was it to be type EM versus a different type. But as I'm looking at job descriptions myself, looking for a new role, I see things that sound contradictory. Like, I want someone who can code 80% of the time, but also want them to be an engineering manager. Like you mentioned earlier, your Mondays, engineering managers are in meetings trying to figure out what's next for the team. Engineering managers need to be able to have one-on-ones with their team. That means coming to that one-on-one prepared. It's not a ad hoc meeting. I need to know what your goals are, what your goals were, like how close are we to them, and what can I do to help? Like, how are you vibe with the energy of the team? Are we moving in the right direction? Are you feeling conflict with the work we're working on? That's not something you do with 20% of your time. If 80% of your time is coding, then you're planning on coding. Like, how can I get this better? When do I get this out? You're worried about the meta information around that. I think the hardest thing that people miss about engineering management is how people-oriented it is and how difficult it is to be people-oriented having a technical background. So being so focused on the technical side of things, which is very fact and object-driven, to the personal side of things, which is very empathetic and still trying to find alignment. So I just think that there's always that missing part where if the project's off, it's the PM's fault, but it's also the EM's fault. If the people are off, it's the EM's fault. If we're not using the newest technology, like, who should be doing that research, right? Like, it's juggling quite a few balls, and no one knows exactly how many you have to juggle at any given point. And then adding another variance of, at some point one of those balls might increase in weight while you're juggling. And
No
so,
way.
yeah. And so, yeah, I think,
I always said, if you ask me what the hardest part about being a product manager is, it's juggling all those balls and knowing which ball can fall and not break and which balls will bounce back.
absolutely. And then trying to catch it and put it back into rotation. Right. No, I'm with you. I love that. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ryan. I totally appreciate it. Yeah. And thank you everyone for listening.